Welcome to this latest episode of the Kielder Observatory podcast, and we are recording on location at Kielder Observatory. I think it's the first time we recorded here for the best part of a year, I think. And, well, the seasons are certainly starting to change. It's getting a little bit cooler. It's a majestic 10 degrees outside at the time of recording this, and the wind is definitely up, and the wind turbine outside is whistling away. So autumn is around the corner. And in this episode, we're going to have a look at some of the stories of space that you may have seen in the news, in the newspapers, but also one or two other missions that are going to be going on as well over the coming weeks, or indeed are going on now, and a little update on those and what we expect to find out from them. But we will start by looking up to the night sky and the things that you can look at wherever you are with whatever facilities you've got, be that a telescope or binoculars or just your naked eye. I'm Ian Brannon. I am not a space expert, which is why I'm joined by four people who frankly are. And we've got Director of Astronomy Dan Pye. We have Ellie MacDonald, who's science communicator. We've got Guy Haveron, who's an astronomer, and we've got Rosie with us as well. These are all people that you may experience if you are coming to visit us very soon. So we'll start by Director of Astronomy Dan Pye. Let's just talk astronomy first of all, and just give us a bit of an outlook at this time of year, because I know that this is one of your favourite times of year, isn't it, Dan?
It is my favourite time of year, with the exception that my favourite thing isn't in the sky.
Right, what's that?
The famed hairy eyebrow galaxy isn't out at this time of year. So.
I think you're nearly on for the clean sweep of every episode this year of dropping the hairy eyebrow galaxy in. Yes, I think frankly it's best just to come to Kielder Observatory, speak to Dan and talk to him about the area, and he can show you his hairy eyebrow in person, and you can live that dream. Got a lovely
picture of it from Hubble from the 90s.
Brilliant. Okay.
But it's a good time of year for things like the Milky Way and things. It's good at this time of year. In fact, actually, I would argue that it's probably one of the best times of year to see the Milky Way from the UK. The best time of year to see the Milky Way really is from May, back end of May onwards, but it's too bright for us in the northern hemisphere. Well, sorry, not in the northern hemisphere, just this high up at this latitude. So better to get souther to places like Tenerife during that time of year to look at the good centre of the Milky Way at a reasonable time. So for us in the UK, this is a really good time of year to see the Milky Way, although it is coming towards an end. So we've got a very short window in which to see the big bright bit as it stretches across our head. But yeah, good time of year for Milky Way, I think. Also, good time of year to see Saturn as well. Guy was mentioning just before. It's a good time of year to see Saturn, isn't it, Guy?
Yeah, it really is. Saturn looks absolutely fab at the moment. It's only 75,000 miles wide in diameter, and it's over 800 million miles away, but still it reflects enough sunlight that it looks absolutely amazing through our telescopes.
And its rings are coming to an end soon as well. Well, they're not coming to an end. That's a headline. It's one of those false headlines, where you get these headlines that says Saturn's going to lose its rings. And I've seen quite a few comments about this on social media this week, but it's not going to lose its rings. It's just the angle that we look at Saturn from. The rings are going to be disappearing momentarily for us, because it'll be what's the best word to describe that? Edge on. Yeah, edge on. So they'll disappear for a little bit, because they're not very thick, those rings. They're only a few meters wide in parts, or in deep in parts. So although they're not very deep, we can still see them at 800 million miles. I think is amazing.
That is a long way away, to be fair, isn't it? A long way. It's amazing that you can see it, obviously, with the, as you say, the naked eye in the night sky, which is fantastic. So what else have we got then going on? What should we be looking out for at this time of year as we look above?
We've still got some really great objects. My favourite object in the entire night sky is still visible at this time of year, which is the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules, or M13, and it's fantastic thing to look at through a telescope, even a fairly small one from home, and it's 23,000 light years away and only 145 light years in diameter. So it looks like someone sprinkled glitter in the middle of the eyepiece when you look at it. So I'm still enjoying that. And of course, we've still got the Ring Nebula as well, visible in the sky as well, which is also a preview of what's going to happen to our sun in about 4 billion years. So that's a nice little object. A slippery little one, though, because when you look directly at it, it can actually be quite hard to see. But if you use your averted vision by not looking at it, it appears. So that's a great one for the guests. Seem to really enjoy that one.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to look out for, and of course with some of that you'll get a great view of it if you are booked onto any of the sessions here at Kielder Observatory over the coming weeks as well, I suppose. Rosie, is there anything else we should be aware of, do you know?
Yeah, well, we're coming up to, in about a week or two, it's the autumn equinox, so it's when the nights are getting longer and the days are finally getting shorter than the nights, so it's astronomers' favourite time of year. Basically getting into autumn and starting to get our winter constellations like Orion is coming up at the moment. Orion's coming up at about 2 a.m-ish, maybe a bit later, but coming to sort of October time, the latter half of the month, I'll be getting earlier and earlier. The equinox is also a good time if you're into photography to capture the zodiacal light, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that is the interplanetary dust of our solar system.
Yeah, I think this time of year is the perfect time to do an all-nighter outside, because early on in the night you do get those slightly more summery things that Guy mentioned, but as you get later you're starting to see things like Orion coming up, so it's just sort of, for me, it's also my favourite time to be outside. But there is also a lunar eclipse to look forward to in the next couple of weeks.
Well, you did the solar eclipse, of course, earlier in the year when you went off to America to see that in all its glory. But tell us about this lunar eclipse then. Do you know when we can see it, and how do you best... obviously having a clear night is going to help, but how do you best maximise your chance of catching it?
It's one of those phenomena with any type of eclipse where it is just you need a clear night and a clear view. This one will reach it, so what you will expect to see, it's not quite like a solar eclipse where, you'll see the sun blocked out. It's not like the moon's going to be blocked out. It will just darken. I think it's meant to darken by what, Dan? Is it like 50% for this one?
Yeah, about 50%, something like that.
Yeah, so you'll see the surface just getting darker and darker, and there will be a small shadow as well on the moon towards the top at its sort of peak of the eclipse, which will be around about 3 a.m. for us, I think. So it's a very early morning, late night thing. But the date of it is the
18th.
18th, thank you.
4 a.m. on the 18th, or 3 a.m. on the 18th.
So just look at the moon, stay up late, get up early, whatever you prefer to do.
Perfect date for the all-nighter, as you mentioned in there.
And no need for any special conditions with that as well. I think a lot of people come to us asking, where do we go to look at the moon and stuff? Just your garden. Yeah, it's big and bright. It's fine. You don't need to go to any special locations to see the moon. It's there. It's bright. No dark skies required. Just clear skies.
And unlike the sun, of course, you can look directly at it. So
yeah, of course.
So definitely that makes it a bit easier as well. So that's something to look out for. Then the 18th of September for the lunar eclipse. But you're going to have to stay up late, 3 o'clock in the morning. Perfect excuse for you to pull an all-nighter. Stargazing. You can do what you want in the meantime, I guess. But as long as you're there at 3 o'clock in the morning, you'll see it.
Good time to start the trend of the hashtag Is Betelgeuse still there as well? Because Betelgeuse is rising again, so at this time of year we're always going, is it still there? Yeah, it's still there. Oh, that's sad. It's a good time to do that. Maybe try Jedi mind tricks to see if you can blow it up.
It's definitely worth a shot.
I heard last year or something, I think there's a 1% chance of it happening within my lifetime.
Well, it's going to happen.
And
1%.
I'm very excited, as long as it happens in the winter though for us and not the summer, of course. But really looking forward to seeing if that happens. I really hope it does.
I don't know. I kind of hope it does happen in the summer rather than winter, because it's going to ruin winter, right? It'll ruin the entire season.
It'll be worth it, though.
But in summer, it should be bright enough, I think, that you'll still see it in the sky. It'll just be next to the sun. Yeah. So you just might struggle to take a picture of it.
It'd be quite interesting, that, though, I think. It'd be quite good, that. Or if it just happens around the transition period between seasons, that might be quite nice. Because it'll last a couple of months, won't it? So,
should do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And arguably, it's probably better on the night time when it's a little bit dimmer, So if it happens at the back end of, not that we're trying to, there's a lot of demands. But if you could just blow up at this precise time, that would be lovely.
It's so when I saw it the other night in the sky during a weekend event, so it was very early in the morning. It was really, because it was so low, it was really twinkling, and I really thought, oh, is it about to go? And I realised, obviously, it was just seeing it through the atmosphere that was making it appear like that. But I momentarily got really excited, thinking, is this it? But sadly, it's not. So we wait.
I mean, it might happen. You know, the film Beetlejuice. I was just saying to Ellie as we were driving here in the car, the spelling, his original spelling is Betelgeuse. But,
yes.
And I didn't know that, because I'm not au fait with the film. I haven't seen it since I was a kid and mortified by it. But the film, of course, is Beetlejuice. But his name is derived from the star name Betelgeuse, which, remember, means armpit in some Akkadian language.
Oh, right, okay. Well, every day's a school day on that front. Yeah, definitely.
An old Arabic word I heard, meaning armpits. And it certainly is when you see Orion.
He needs armpit.
Yeah, well, there's obviously a method in the madness there. Absolutely.
Big sweat stain after it goes.
Well, one to look out for then. We'll obviously, it may well happen at some point, and if it could coincide with the Betelgeuse event that Kielder are going to be holding on that particular day, then even better. So there's a few things to look out for, and of course, keep up to date with everything happening in the night sky. Just head onto the Kielder Observatory website, kielderobservatory.org, because there's monthly guides there for everything that you need to know. Let's have a look at some of the stories then that are around that you may have heard, and this has been quite a big one actually, and there's all sorts of stuff to unpack with this one. But the astronauts who went for a 2-week trip to test out the new capsule and now are there until February. I mean, it's sort of about, things going wrong, but it could have gone obviously a lot worse, but they're okay. This is the new capsule that Boeing made, isn't it? And it went off to the space station, and there were some problems with it. They've decided that, obviously for safety reasons, they didn't want to sort of chance it too much. So the capsule has returned to Earth successfully, but the astronauts now they're there now until February, so they're there for another eight months. Now it's worth saying these astronauts have been to the space station before, I believe, so they're experienced. It's not like they're just nipping out for a fortnight and have stayed for 8 months. We've all had that kind of experience in our lives at some point, I'm sure. So they're doing other projects. But just talk to us about this then, and the implications really, because it's a bit of a PR disaster for Boeing in some respects, although they're styling it out saying actually the mission was a success, defined success. But in the obviously everybody's safe and the capsule worked, but it's a bit of a setback there. But probably a bit of a gift for Elon Musk, who now has got the chance and the job with his SpaceX company to go in there and ride in and save the day.
Yeah, so the Boeing Starliner was developed around about the same time as SpaceX started to develop a lot of their own things for getting astronauts up, and it was part of NASA's plans. Their big plan is to sort of try to support this commercialization of the space industry, just so they've got more options, because they've been relying on Soyuz to launch their astronauts for the last couple of decades, and it's not an ideal situation, really. So the Starliner has just taken so much longer than it was supposed to take. It's had setback after setback after setback. The uncrewed test launches were all rife with issues, and then the crewed one itself was also delayed twice. They had to scrub 2 of its launches before they successfully did it, and I think this is just sort of the last thing they needed, is for it to go wrong in space as well as going wrong on the ground.
They'll say it's been a success, but there's been all sorts of things. Obviously, the sort of technical malfunctions, and then this other thing as well. I don't know if you've heard this recording of the capsule making some weird pinging noises, and sort of radioing down to Earth, going. It's sort of like a sonar kind of noise, wasn't it? It went ping, ping, and obviously in space, there's no outside sounds really, so it must be coming from within. So yeah, there's quite a lot to unpack with all that really.
Yeah, I think a lot of cars these days have like emergency breakdown pinging, and maybe that was it. It was the RAC or the AA ping. But the mission was fraught and dangerous because it was the thrusters were malfunctioning and they were intermittently cutting in and out, which, as you can imagine, in space, it would be like trying to drive a car with the steering intermittently cutting in and out. But obviously that would be bad enough, but when you're often going into space, you could end up anywhere, so extremely dangerous. And I dare say the astronauts must have had a few moments where they were sort of repeat of Apollo 13 type of thing going on, but luckily they got there. But I think it's a bit of a kick in the teeth for them that SpaceX Dragon's going to be bringing them back. So good luck to Boeing for the future with that one.
It's not going well with Boeing at the moment. They're not doing very well with their founding basis of aeroplanes, let alone putting people in space, you know. It's not going well.
Yeah, they've had a few aviation problems recently with bits of window blowing out of aircraft
737 Max,
and stuff.
was it? The 737 Max, and then windows blowing out,
Yeah.
and plugs blowing out and stuff.
Yeah, it's not what you want. But obviously, you know, anything to do with space travel, I guess, is likely fraught with issues. Nothing ever goes to plan. Obviously, the long-term plan is for this to, you know, be a mode of transport to space for the next, 20, 30 years or something like that. So they will say, well, looking at the bigger picture, this is our first manned mission. And yeah, okay, we'd left some, it was a test mission. That, it wasn't like, they were trying it out. So they will say that, overall it worked. But I guess if you're the astronauts going in it next time, whenever that is, you're going to be a little bit nervous, aren't you, going up in that?
And this is what they sign up for, isn't it, really? They're putting themselves in. They know what they're getting into. First off, they're going into space, dangerous. Then they're strapping themselves to a lot of rocket fuel, dangerous. Then they're putting themselves in a little tin can in space, another danger. So they know what they're getting into, especially the test pilots. They're super brave, desensitized, special types of people, I think. So I guess.
Yeah, I think on the the sort of byproduct of the thing, from what I've heard, is that obviously now they're going to be there for quite some time, quite a long time. They're not by any stretch the longest an astronaut has been in space, but 8 months is it's a fair stretch. And this now means they've got a sort of a backup plan, and that is that they're going to be part of research of being in space for a long time. And actually, that may be to help contribute to a potential mission to Mars. So there's luckily they're not flying to Mars, because if it had gone wrong, they could have been sent in that direction, which would have been two birds with one stone. But as it is that how the human body reacts over extended periods, so maybe there is a bit of extra research that will come from it.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that it's happened even to these specific astronauts. So the astronauts up there are Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. And Sunny Williams in 2012, that was her last time, I think, that she was on the ISS, and she was commander in 2012. That was a mission that got extended because of hail, actually, for her return journey. So hail was what delayed at that time. So she's had this experience before of being delayed, being stuck up there, if you want to use the word stuck. But, I mean, we say stuck, I would gladly take an 8-month stay on the ISS.
They're probably having a really nice time. Yeah, I think they love it. That's why they do it, don't they? They have a deep love for space travel and the end mission and whatever comes their way.
Yeah, I think potentially if they'd been up there for 8 days, I think it would have been one of those things where they would have been just trying to, I know they've been up before, but they would have been trying to savour every moment of it, whereas 8 months, it will really ground into their psyche and what have you, and it will certainly be a life-changing experience for them. But I think that would be amazing to be up there unexpectedly, and just to have that view of the Earth from 250 miles up must be absolutely incredible. No borders or anything like that. You're just seeing the blue marble down below, and must be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was doing some research as well, again, on the astronauts up there, and particularly about Sunny Williams. And during one of her prior ISS stays, she actually ran the Boston Marathon.
Yeah, she was the first, wasn't she? First person to run a marathon in space.
And she did a triathlon as well, but obviously she couldn't swim, so she had to replace that with an
First person to
exercise
swim
machine.
in space.
Be awkward, wouldn't it?
That would be an achievement. Yeah, so that's well, obviously they're going to be there for a while. It's a bit of a potential plot for another movie, isn't it? But they're there until February, and hopefully, obviously making a safe return then with the SpaceX program, which is not what Boeing were particularly hoping for. So that's ongoing at the moment, and best of luck to them. Maybe they're listening to the podcast. I've got a lot of time to spend up there, so why not?
Going through every astronomy podcast on the planet.
I was going to say, they'll listen to all the rest. They will, but probably by January, just before they come back, made it down to ours.
We're still trying to get one of our Kielder mugs up to the International Space Station, so if anyone out there is going up soon, buy a Kielder mug and take it up.
Buy a Kielder mug.
Take it up, you've got to buy it first.
Of course.
I think it's probably a barrier to entry, as they say there. Send it to NASA. So there's a couple of missions ongoing as well right now, or about to get underway, actually, with various probes and satellites. One, first of all, let's talk about the one that's learning more about Mercury. What can we tell us about that?
So that's Bepicolombo. So that launched in 2018, and it was designed to explore a bit about Mercury. Mercury is a planet that we don't know much about. It's very close to the sun, so it's quite hard to see from Earth just because the sun's so bright, and it's difficult to get things out there because the gravity from the sun, it can like destable things that are going out there. So it's our least explored planet. So this is quite exciting. We're going to be finding more about it. But to get there and to be able to sort of get slow enough to go around Mercury and orbit it safely, it needs to do a number of flybys to sort of slow it down. So I think it's just done its fourth flyby around Mercury, which means we get lots of great pictures until we get eventually to the planet. I think it took some lovely pictures of some of the craters. Which is, very interesting to see.
Yeah, because Mercury is a planet that obviously we know a bit about, but we don't know as much of it as say, Mars, for example. And obviously the big hazard with Mercury is the fact that it's very close to the sun and rather hot. How does this probe then cope with those conditions?
All it's doing is it's conducting flybys, so it consists of 2 satellites primarily to do these flybys, and what it's doing is it's doing multiple gravity assists, which is actually kind of where it got its name. So it's named after Giuseppe Colombo, who was a professor, he was an Italian professor, and he first proposed for gravity assist manoeuvre. So he was the person to sort of come up with the idea of doing this, so they named it after him. So all they're doing is they're just flying by every now and then. I think the next one's in December is when the next one is scheduled at the moment. Just getting a little bit closer and closer. So I think it doesn't have to deal too much with things like heat shields, so it doesn't even need to be too shielded because it's not spending an enormous amount of time in close proximity to the sun. It's just doing these brief flybys, going away and coming back again. Mm-hmm. So I think that's sort of how they mitigated that. And then when they get closer, they'll separate, so the 2 satellites will come apart. And they've both got 2 different things. So it's a joint mission. So it's joint between the European Space Agency and JAXA, which is the Japanese Space Agency. And so the ESA satellite is a Mercury planetary orbiter, and so that's looking at the geology of the planet and its composition, and it's looking at things like, why does it have ice in its polar caps? Why is that there when it's so close to the sun? Mm-hmm. And then you've also got the Japanese satellite, which is a Mercury magnetospheric orbiter, which is looking at why does it have a magnetic field? We thought it would have been too small for it until we discovered one accidentally. And I quite like that one. So the Japanese one, they went to the public to try and get a name for it. They named it Mio, which means, I believe, waterways. Is that right, Dan?
What's that?
The Japanese public named their satellite Mio.
Mio? I don't know, actually. I know that Mizu means water, and Kawa is river. But there's another word for river as well. But waterways, yeah, it could be anything.
But it's quite nice. I think it's quite a cute name, and I also think it's quite indicative of a difference between the English public and the Japanese public. But when you go to the English public and ask them to name something, you end up with Boeing a boat face. And you go to the Japanese public and you get something lovely like Mio.
Another mission then is the Europa Clipper, which this is really interesting because this is going to Europa, one of the moons around Jupiter, and the reason why this is particularly interesting is that it's long been thought that this moon potentially has the facility to sustain some form of life, and they think there's a big, massive ocean underneath this icy shell that it has. So tell us more about this then, because this could be pretty significant depending on what they find.
Yeah, so this is, I think, one, maybe like the most likely place we're going to find life, if we are going to find life in the solar system, at least, top 3 or something.
And by that, I mean, in terms of life, anything at this moment would whether it's like some kind of amoeba would be a breakthrough, because frankly, outside of Earth, we found nothing so far, anywhere.
So anything, even the tiniest thing, would be very exciting. So we've already got JUICE that's on its way to Jupiter, and that's going to be looking at the icy moons of Jupiter, including Europa, but particularly Ganymede, and also I think Io and Jupiter itself. But this one's only focused on Europa specifically to look for signs of life, or if it's possibly habitable for life, and looking for the signs of if there's an ocean underneath. So the reason they think that there's possibly life on Europa is that scientists are pretty sure, not 100%, but pretty sure that there's a big ocean underneath the ice there. So they'll be looking for, the nature of that as well.
Yeah, as to whether there's anything living in there or potentially could live in there, because obviously, you need the building blocks of life, like oxygen or some form of carbon-related evidence, I suppose, isn't it? That where even if it's long gone, that maybe there's evidence that something has been there.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because photosynthesis, the process of sunlight, obviously giving energy for life to form, doesn't happen at the bottom of the oceans. But a famous guy called Robert Ballard, who of course is famous for discovering the Titanic wreck in the 80s, and before that he became quite well known for discovering these hydrothermic vents at the bottom of the sea, which are sort of spewing out mineral-rich deposits from below the crust, coming up through the crust and onto the ocean floor, and life has formed around those vents. So that's really interesting, because if that can happen on the Earth, that could happen anywhere, and with Jupiter's gravity maybe just squeezing and stretching the moon slightly, there could be activity beneath the crust, and there could be these vents on the ocean floor. So exciting times, and we'll keep an eye out on that one. And
we know those minerals are there because we only a couple of years ago there was the discovery, which I know we've talked about a couple of times in the podcast now, of the amino acids in carbonaceous chondrites, and then the nuclear bases for DNA and RNA, all 5 of them in carbonaceous chondrites as well. So the kind of raw mineral ingredients that you need to get life started, as it did here on Earth, they're pretty much likely to be there. The question is, and somebody posed this question the other night in a question to me as well, and I didn't really know the answer because, of course, it's not our field. We need to get Wallace Arthur back on the podcast.
We do,
to fill in the gaps on this one, because developments have been made since we last spoke to Wallace as well, so his opinions might have changed. But there was a genetic mutation that happened with DNA, which may have been the result in why we had life on Earth, but I don't really know the specifics in that. So whether or not those genetic mutations happened on places like Europa and Enceladus, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, Wallace Arthur was the very first guest we had on this podcast way back when, and it was fascinating, and I think we definitely do need to get him back on, because he talks all about, frankly, aliens, which is one of the top subjects, isn't it? That people love to talk about aliens and life, and it was him that mentioned about the fact that there is so far no life anywhere, but he's absolutely 1,000% certain that it does exist, and it's probably potentially more advanced than we are.
Yeah, he might be really excited about the new stuff, I think. Yeah, definitely. And some of that research as well that we just talked about there, of course, came from the Winchcombe meteorite, the one that landed in the UK. The amino acid research came from that, with the University of Manchester, I think it was, who made that lovely little discovery. But I think it was really exciting. it's my most look forward to thing in astronomy is the day that I wake up and it's like life has been found and it's in our solar system, and if it's on Mars I'll eat my hat.
Yes.
I agree.
Where do you think it is then?
I think it's Europa for sure.
Reckon?
Yeah, Europa or Enceladus, I think, are good breeding grounds. From what we know in the limited knowledge that I have in this subject, but from my understanding, those are really good incubators for life. Those two worlds. So I think these missions may produce some really good findings, really good discoveries that'll change our view. But whether or not, this is the next question, is how will we be told? Will it get out, as all science does, to a free network of distribution of information, or will it be censored in some description? But then we kind of head down in that territory of conspiracy, I think. Yeah. It's starting to sound like Joe Rogan's podcast now.
I guess it depends what the life is, doesn't it? You know, if it's just like a microbial sort of thing they find in the water, and it's just evidence of some sort of life, or if it's obviously a colony of little green men, then
mermaids.
That's obviously good. Mermen, even
Mer people,
squid.
Squid, yeah.
The Squid Kingdom, whatever it is, obviously that's
dolphins.
Yeah,
they're aliens. On a completely separate topic.
Do you think they've come here just to? That is the more advanced life that's come from this other world that Wallace is speaking of. It's the dolphins.
I mean, it was called out by Hitchhiker's Guide, really, wasn't it? That dolphins are from space. But I did see a video today on a completely separate topic of dolphins. They were making rings in the water and then swimming through the rings and playing with the rings of air that they'd made in the water. They're aliens. I'm convinced.
I don't think you can just say just because another animal has fun, they're aliens.
Yeah. They're aliens. That's what I'm sticking with. No animal can have fun.
But what I really love about this is we talk about the possibility of life in Europa. This means that the end of mission plan for Europa Clippers specifically, they've been talking about it recently, or fairly recently, like 2022. The plan is potentially to avoid killing anything on Europa that we might find. So this is a planetary protection protocol. Is just to crash into Ganymede instead.
I know.
Just kill anything that might be there.
Which itself could have a water ocean underneath. So that seems strange.
Pick Io at least.
Yes.
Where did Huygens land on again?
I don't think it landed as such.
It did.
It was Titan.
Titan, that was it.
That was right.
No,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the wrong moons.
That video of it coming down through the through the cloud to the surface there was quite exciting. That was a few years ago. That was.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Actually, I think ever since Cassini discovered the salt water venting out of Enceladus, I really obviously economically it's difficult, but I really can't understand why we're not jumping on that. And it's the biggest question, surely, of personkind, is are we alone in the universe? And if life is in our solar system, I think it would be, and I think we should be going back there with haste and getting a big Black & Decker drill out and drilling through that 10-kilometre ice and seeing if there's dolphins swimming there.
I think it's a big priority for NASA because one of their major programs now is this Ocean Worlds Discovery program or something like that. And so they've got several quite large class missions that are in development or with Europa Clipper being launched imminently. So that's actually being launched hopefully 10th of October, all to go out to these ocean worlds, and not just Jupiter's but other ones as well. So I think it is a priority. It's just it takes a while to get anything done. So even launching it soon, so you're launching Europa Clipper 10th of October, it's not going to get out there until I think it's 2029 or 2030 maybe?
2030, I think.
Life's too short. I'm getting on. I need it to happen now.
And the interesting thing about the Europa one as well is that's probably one of the hottest candidates of these two ocean worlds because it has a nearby influencer which could be giving it a little bit of stimulus to maybe make life happen, which is Io. Io's spewing out stuff, and that's being collected by Europa and landing in these little cracks that then potentially sinks into the ocean and maybe transitions into life.
Could well be, but yeah, obviously the distance, it takes a little while to get there, but as you say, we could be, closer than we ever have been to finding out the answers of what lies in those worlds. And of course, as soon as we do find life there, then we'll be sending a Kielder Observatory mug on the next available rocket. So,
with a bill, obviously.
Yeah. We're not getting it free. Coming up then, as we head in towards, it's September now, October, but you can book ahead for, pretty much next year ahead, 6 months, year ahead, online now, and plan ahead for your trip up to Kielder Observatory, so don't miss out, and everything's on sale now.
It is, and we actually have 2 new events which haven't been announced yet, but they're on the boil, very soon to be announced. One is mildly controversial, perhaps, but we'll leave that for a secret for another day.
Wow. Okay. So all the sessions are available, and also obviously October half term will be along very soon. I might already be here by the time you listen to this. I'm not sure, but there's also kids sessions as well, which take place on weekends, but also in the school holidays as well. So book ahead in advance of those. There's plenty going on there.
Yeah.
Great. So before we go then, we talked about all the different things that you can see in the night sky at this time of year. We like to give you a little bit of a challenge. We call it Pie in the Sky because Dan Pye is the director of astronomy and he knows stuff about things that are in the sky. Dan, something a little bit more stretching for people to locate at this time of year.
Yeah, I'm not going to give you it because Ellie has a better one that she's going to share with you because she's dying to share it. So Ellie, what's your object of the month?
So it's an open cluster and it's in the constellation of Cepheus. So it is circumpolar. Technically, you could see this any time of year, but it's starting to get into quite a nice high position at the moment. And its designation is NGC 7160, which makes it sound incredibly boring, but it's not. It's really lovely. It's beautiful. It is better known as the swimming alligator cluster because through a telescope, and it is a telescope object, it looks like an alligator just swimming through the sort of milky black waters of space. Its alternate name, of course, is also the Bruce Lee cluster. So depending on how you look at it, it's either a swimming alligator or it's Bruce Lee. And I just love it. It's one of my favourite objects in the sky, and I love showing it to people.
Okay, and roughly, what's the best plan of attack of looking for that? Then, where do people go about it?
Yeah, so if you can find the constellation of Cepheus, which looks sort of like a house that is being knocked down by wind, it's slightly wonky.
Okay. We'll call it the Three Little Pigs Galaxy.
Yeah. So at the base of Cepheus, so opposite from the triangle, we've got 2 stars that are quite bright. We usually use those 2 stars to find the garnet star or Arrakis, which we sometimes refer to as being in the garden path, because it's just a little bit between them and in a bit forwards from the rest of the constellation. The best thing to do is to kind of mirror it. So you want to be inside the body of Cepheus, so you want to sort of flip on the other side, but you're roughly the same sort of depth. But yes, the swimming alligator cluster. Try and find it.
Okay, look for the swimming alligator. Let us know how you get on, and we'll have another little challenge for you in the next episode. Right, well, I think that sorts us out for this point. We'll be back in a few weeks with more, but hopefully that's updated you on the latest situation of both what's happening in the news, what's happening in the night sky, and what's happening here at Kielder Observatory, and we'll be back with another episode very soon.